There is perhaps no better heavy-lift helicopter in operation today than Boeing's CH-47F Chinook. It's the primary logistical helicopter of the United States military, specifically designed with transportation of heavy cargo payloads in mind. An icon of Vietnam War-era engineering with numerous points of entry, multiple loading styles, the capacity to carry a medium-sized platoon of combat-ready troops into action, and the wounded back to safety, it's able to operate in almost any scenario. However, despite its battle-tested abilities during conflicts like the Vietnam War, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Freedom Sentinel in Afghanistan, it is a rather unexpected, non-wartime use case: disaster relief. And these troops loading the back of one of these CH-47F Chinooks are the Flippers, a general support battalion of Bravo Company based out of Simmons Airfield. On this particular day, after this particular storm, the 82nd Airborne Division is responding to orders from North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper. Their mission? Airlift supplies throughout the washed-out mountainous communities of the state's western region. You see, some 72 hours before this footage was captured, the state was devastated by an incredibly strong tropical storm, the deadliest inland hurricane on record in American history since Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, Hurricane Helene. To date, the storm has claimed an approximate 232 lives nationally, 117 of which were tallied in North Carolina alone, nearly half of the national figure. But the impact doesn't end with loss of life. According to CoreLogic, a property information and analytics provider, Helene caused some $47.5 billion in wind and flood damage across 16 different states, while AccuWeather pegs total damages and economic losses at more than 5x CoreLogic's figure, $250 billion. Yet the real danger, one that hasn't been fully accounted for, since it will take months and maybe even years to fully address, is North Carolina's deteriorated road network. But reconstruction costs aside, in the immediate aftermath of this storm, ground access for emergency medical services has been decimated, making relief efforts all the more difficult. Nearly 3,200 of North Carolina's roads, bridges, and highways have been impacted by the storm statewide, particularly so for the mountainous Appalachian communities in the state's west. Even though the federal government supplied $100 million for immediate emergency road work, it wouldn't be enough, as some roads were just gone. They'd have to take to the skies. Given the need to airlift hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers and emergency response personnel, maintenance equipment, generators, and supplies throughout the Blue Ridge Mountains, North Carolina's 7 life flight helicopter services wouldn't be enough. Combined, these fleets only have 10 helicopters, 7 H-135s, an EC-135, an H-145, and a Bell 429 Global Ranger. If all were in use simultaneously, they'd only have the capacity to airlift a total of 71 people. So in order to really make an impact, the state would need to call in the military's high-capacity flying cranes, the CH-47Fs, and fast. But 9 days before fleets of these CH-47F Chinooks would make their first supply drops, in some 1,130 miles, or 1,818 kilometers southwest of Simmons Airfield in Fayetteville, a mass of clouds had begun to collect. It was a rather small, seemingly benign thunderstorm that was spotted 150 miles, or 241.4 kilometers off the coast of the Cayman Islands, in this northern portion of the Caribbean Sea. The low-pressure system, which had been seen out of a porthole on this high-wing, medium-range data collector, a Lockheed WC-130J Hercules, was the beginnings of Hurricane Helene. The massive aircraft was being operated by a crew of just 5, a team made up of a pilot, co-pilot, and 3 scientists. They are members of the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron, and aptly dubbed the Hurricane Hunters, a subset of the 403rd Wing based out of Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. Like all their missions, they're tasked with transmitting relevant real-time data, otherwise known as aerial reconnaissance, regarding weather systems developing off the Gulf Coast. They're able to accomplish this because of the aircraft's onboard satellite that links directly to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, an organization responsible for tracking all tropical storms within this specific region of the globe. Over the next 3 days, both the 53rd WRS and the NHC would follow the humble beginnings of Helene, a harmless, low-pressure system initially, which would then form into a Category 1 hurricane, before quickly swelling past Category 2 into a Category 3. Her latest upgrade to Category 3 is what ultimately triggered this foreboding headline warning on Wednesday, September 25th, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or NOAA for short. Communities need to prepare for catastrophic, life-threatening inland flooding from Helene, even well after landfall. The issuance of this warning goes on to say that Helene is an unusually large storm, whose wind field extends as far as 275 miles from its center. Even well before landfall, heavy rainfall will begin in portions of the southeastern United States and will continue to move northward into the southern Appalachians region through Friday, where storm total rainfall amounts are forecast to be up to 18 inches. By the next night, she had grown yet again, this time into a Category 4 storm, the second strongest category of hurricane, making landfall off of Florida's Gulf Coast at 11:10 p.m. Throughout the following day, Helene would rip into Georgia and Alabama, flooding both the Carolinas that evening, and finally push into Tennessee before fully downgrading into a low-pressure system once again. But by Friday, the true scope of flooding, landslides, erosion, and damage was in full focus, and North Carolina got the brunt of it, who had already seen very heavy rain for 2 days leading up to Helene. Between September 25th and 27th, Yancey County recorded 31 inches of rain, or 78 centimeters. Other communities recorded 24 inches, or nearly 61 centimeters of rain, while the weather station at Asheville Regional Airport recorded 14 inches, or 35.5 centimeters of rain before their sensors went offline. The combined rainfalls in previously saturated soil resulted in rivers swelling to record levels, like the French Broad River reaching heights of 24.7 feet, or 7.5 meters, a full foot, or 0.3 meters past its previous record, while the Swannanoa River rose to 26.1 feet, or 7.9 meters, smashing the previous record by more than 6 feet, or 1.8 meters, both of which would take nearly 4 days to subside out of the flash flood threshold. With such heavy inundation of these rivers and the resulting structural damage to roadways, Governor Roy Cooper declared that more than 3,200 of their roads, state routes, and interstates, not all of which were closed, were undergoing work due to the severe damage from Helene. The closed routes, however, were concentrated in 1/4 of North Carolina counties, specifically here, North Carolina Department of Transportation Divisions 11, 13, and 14. They accounted for 94.75% of all roadway closures relating to Helene in the state. So in just these 3 NCDOT divisions, which fall within North Carolina Emergency Management branches in areas 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, there was a reported 595 road, state route, and interstate closures, effectively cutting off some 1.28 million residents, or about 11.9% of the state's total population. Broadening the scope, Western North Carolina's road crisis would be on par with the combined populations of Anchorage, Honolulu, and Denver, losing access to more than 500,000 roads, all at once. It's a region that, if it were a city, would rank as the 10th most populous in America, putting it above Jacksonville, Florida, and about 15,000 shy of that of Dallas, Texas. And therein lay the incredibly dangerous problem. It's a massive population size, relying on a sizable chunk of the second largest state-maintained highway network in the United States. Further compounding the problem at hand, the population isn't concentrated within a city center. The population residing within these 3 divisions are spread across some 10,597 square miles, or some 17,054 square kilometers, just a few hundred square feet smaller than the country of Haiti. So it's a population size larger than most American metros, spread across an area the size of a small country, in pockets of varying population densities whose roads have been washed away. The only reliable means of entry was aircraft. The National Guard had to use their helicopter fleets. The fleets of CH-47F Chinooks were able to mobilize because Governor Roy Cooper proactively issued a state of emergency September 25th, 2024. This is important because an issuance of statewide emergency allows for the mobilization of that specific state's National Guard. More importantly, though, it triggers EMAC, the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, as Lieutenant Colonel Brian Cooper of the 111th General Support Aviation Battalion explains.
It's an agreement between states that enables another National Guard organization to go into that state to help those citizens in need.
In this case, EMAC allowed North Carolina to call on sister states to supplement their own resources without the need of federal assistance. This doesn't mean, however, that the state doesn't receive federal aid in the event that EMAC is triggered. Rather, the support through EMAC can complement federal assistance if warranted, or replace it if none is awarded at all, which unfortunately did happen to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria hit in 2017. As a United States territory, Puerto Rico does qualify for EMAC, so the 25-year-old agreement effectively acts as a force force multiplier in the event federal aid is awarded, or as a safety net in the event it's obstructed. EMAC functions like this. The state of emergency is confirmed and state needs are assessed. The impacted state decides if the emergency can be handled internally. If not, they identify the best source directly through the emergency operations system or from the broader FEMA regions. The state then accounts for cost and availability of said resources before a formal request to an assisting state is issued. Finally, the resources are staged and deployed throughout the receiving state. This complex back and forth happens all within a matter of days and is what inevitably allowed for Joint Task Force North Carolina to deploy more than 3,500 soldiers and airmen from some 12 different states, representing half of all personnel deployed nationally, to aid the communities of Western North Carolina. It also allowed for the deployment of required assets from sister states to effectively mitigate the impact of Hurricane Helene, like two of Florida's
CH-47 Chinooks with heavy lift capabilities.
Currently, the task force has 26 aviation assets under management and some 1,200 specialized vehicles in Western North Carolina alone, a good portion of which are Boeing's CH-47F Chinook helicopters. Excluding its crew of 3, it has the capacity to airlift some 33 personnel, or 24 litters for medevacs, making it a transport juggernaut in disaster relief scenarios. Additionally, the CH-47F possesses versatile loading options for its 50,000-pound or 22,679 kilograms gross maximum operating weight. First, the hull is equipped with a cargo on-off loading system, or COOLS for short. Since each Chinook is fit with a roller conveyor, the COOLS is capable of easily rolling on up to 4 463L master pallets. For added flexibility, assuming the crew needs to transport something that wouldn't fit inside its hull, like an industrial generator or an excavator for instance, the rotorcraft is able to sling load payloads via its hook system. There's the center hook, capable of hoisting 26,000 pounds or 11,793 kilograms. Then there's its aft hook, capable of carrying up to 17,000 pounds or 7,711 kilograms. And finally, its tandem hook, with a capacity of 25,000 pounds or 11,339 kilograms. Despite the CH-47F's capacity to deliver substantial amounts of personnel, gear, and supplies, keeping pace with the approximately 20,000 hot meals being prepared for communities daily, these cargo helicopters needed the added boost of logistical efficiency. Joint Task Force North Carolina needed a staging center, so they strategically chose Asheville's regional airport as their hub. It's centrally located within the NCDOT divisions and large enough to allow for supply missions from the C-17 Globemaster III. The C-17 Globemaster III is a cargo aircraft with an impressive payload of 160,000 pounds, or 72,574 kilograms, which equates to a lot of food, water, and medical supplies in one single run. Additionally, utilizing this aircraft to airlift EMAC supplies from Charlotte Douglas International Airport rather than on the beds of semi-trucks would cut the now unreliable 7-hour drive into a quick, safe 30-minute flight. Effectively, they had created an air bridge. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Cooper goes on to say,
That air bridge will enable us to move supplies, commodities to other areas that are impacted that can't get high-wheel vehicles to those citizens. And then additional assets we're able to do is a sling load all those heavy lift equipment into that area to start clearing roadways in order to get the immediate response to those citizens.
As of October 6th, about a week after Helene hit North Carolina, 4 C-17 missions have delivered 228 463L pallets, some 50,000 pounds or 22,679 kilograms of various supplies, and more than 400,000 pounds or 181,436 kilograms of water, MREs, or meals ready to eat, as well as medication. This means that, in just under 1 week, Western North Carolina received enough supplies to perform nearly 57 missions with their CH-47F Chinooks. This of course assumes that each Chinook was fully loaded with the 4-pallet maximum, and that they weren't delivering supplies via a sling load. This is all to say, from the time that the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron first spotted a thunderstorm off the coast of the Cayman Islands, to the National Hurricane Center relaying Helene's developments to NOAA issuing its first warning to the southern Appalachian region, to Governor Roy Cooper declaring a state of emergency, to Helene flooding much of western North Carolina, to EMAC enabling National Guardsmen and women from across 24% of the nation to deploy to the Blue Ridge Mountains, to critical assets and supplies being flown into the state, a logistical air bridge was built to connect Charlotte Douglas International Airport to Asheville Regional Airport Staging Center to the final drop points throughout North Carolina emergency management branches and areas 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. It's truly an impressive feat of cross-state and federal cooperation that couldn't have been done without this modern variant of a 60-some-year-old piece of Vietnam-era engineering, the Chinook cargo helicopter, the military's workhorse. I am in no way sponsored or financially incentivized to make this ask, but if you feel so inclined to make a gift that will directly support the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund, please visit the link listed in the video description. It is the state's official crowdfunding platform on North Carolina's official government website, www.nc.gov/disaster relief fund facts.